If you knew that someone could completely eliminate the chances of you achieving what you want, would you allow it, or would you fight back? Back in college, I discovered that the old trick of sticking your phone in rice had its limits. After my phone decided to jump into the ocean and die. Back then, I didn't have the money to just go ahead and buy a new one, so I was without a phone for at least a week. In the Dominican Republic, college doesn't come with fraternities, parties, or on-campus events, so all I had to entertain myself was my classes. And to fill up my time, I spent time with my family, I had read some psychology books, and I even did some homework. By day 4, I dragged myself reluctantly to my cognitive process class. It was one of my hardest classes, mainly because of the professor, Mr. Sanchez. That guy did not believe in mercy. But that day, Mr. Sanchez announced a contest. He said, whoever could best explain what consciousness is in one page will get an A in the class and will no longer have to attend the class for the rest of the semester. My eyes popped. I had to win that contest. So I went neck deep into the research, reading everything I could about consciousness. I was watching hour-long videos about different theories, and for some reason, all the effort that I was exerting felt engaging and compelling. I was determined to give the best explanation of consciousness. A few days later, Mr. Sanchez was ready to announce the winner of the contest. He said as I held my breath, "The winner of the contest is Manuel Gonzamonte." And I said, thank you. I already knew that I was going to win. I honestly gave a very good explanation of consciousness. What started as an excruciatingly boring week ended up not only yielding me a get-out-of-class-free card, but was one of the most productive weeks of my educational career. And don't get me wrong, I was a good student, but that level of engagement was not common. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget the year in high school that I bought my first smartphone. As a result, I spent all of my time playing with my new toy instead of studying for finals. And obviously, the week before finals rolled around. I needed to get good grades in order to go to this summer camp that I was really looking forward to. So I needed to do well in the exams. As I crammed, I quickly realized the amount of information I had to learn in just 1 week. Stress slowly trickled in like venom in my veins. It started as a sharp lower back pain, and it grew to the point where breathing normally felt almost impossible. I forgot about the camp altogether because apparently I was about to die. It became so intense that I had to be taken to the hospital where they gave me muscle relaxers and painkillers. Lying in the hospital bed, I was alive and pain-free, but I had a pit in my stomach. I couldn't shake the sinking realization that I have brought this upon myself. Why couldn't I have been studying all along? Why was a simple discipline so difficult? So I promised myself that I will unravel the mystery of why we struggle with mundane tasks, even though we know they're necessary for achieving our goals. And 16 years later, I did. In 2014, Timothy D. Wilson and his team decided to explore what happens when people are left alone with their thoughts. Participants sat quietly in a plain room from 6 to 15 minutes with the option to self-administer a small electric shock if they so desired. All participants found sitting with their thoughts to be unpleasant, saying that they would rather do any other task instead. Many of them decided to self-administer the small electric shock, including 25% of the females and 67% of the males. And that's not including a guy that shocked himself 190 times. This study reveals a crucial fact about the human mind. If our only two options were to be utterly bored or doing the things that we know we have to do, we'll do the things in a heartbeat. However, we don't live in that type of world. Not anymore. We live in a world of infinite distractions and constant overstimulation. And this messes with a key component for our success, dopamine. Dopamine, often referred as the motivation molecule, is essential for performing tasks that will benefit our future, like working today to pay the bills or exercising for better health. Dopamine gives us the capacity to perform both mundane and exciting tasks. However, maintaining healthy levels of dopamine throughout routine tasks can be challenging, especially in this modern world. Imagine waking up and the first meal you eat is a delicious piece of a birthday cake. Anything else you eat throughout the day will taste flavorless in comparison. Similarly, if we wake up and the first thing we do is grab our phones and scroll on social media, any other activity we do will have to be just as stimulating in order to really keep us engaged. We have evolved into a society that sees necessary daily tasks as boring, like studying or doing chores, but they're only boring because we're comparing them to overstimulation. So, how can we fix this? What is the fix for this? What happens is, when we scroll through our phones, we trigger a rush of dopamine through the mesolimbic pathway, also known as the dopamine desire circuit, which makes us chase immediate gratification and pursue things that we don't have. It also causes our dopamine to spike above baseline, rewarding the behavior of scrolling on our phones. And once we stop scrolling, it drops. And when it recovers but below our baseline. So why is this a problem? What happens when our dopamine is low? Or what happens when our dopamine is below our baseline? Well, researchers from the University of Connecticut decided to study this concept in rats. They separated rats into two groups. One group of normal levels of dopamine, and the other group was injected with a neurotoxin that destroyed some of their dopamine cells. After reducing the rats' weight to make them hungry, researchers gave the rats an opportunity to work for treats. They discovered that both groups of rats enjoyed the treats the same. However, as the number of lever presses in order to receive a treat kept increasing, the normal rats worked harder and harder, and the depleted rats worked less and less, eventually giving up. Without enough dopamine, the depleted rats lacked the tenacity to follow through with their tasks. Similarly, when we deplete our dopamine levels through the spike and crash of scrolling on social media, we undermine our ability to exert effort towards our goals. So how can we fight back? There's another dopamine pathway called the mesocortical pathway, also known as the dopamine desire circuit. It controls calculation, planning, problem solving, and decision making. It helps us prevent addictive behaviors, it helps us focus on the important things, and it helps us sustain long-term focus. It's basically the tenacity pathway, helping us achieve what we want. So, if there was a way that we could channel more dopamine through the control circuit rather than the desire circuit, we can maximize our tenacity and focus for our goals. After nearly a decade of research, I've created a protocol that helps us do just that. The protocol goes like this. Number 1, prime yourself. As soon as you wake up, start your day with productive content instead of social media. When I was working on my research, I will wake up and I will read a chapter of a psychology book. I didn't know it back then, but this was priming me for my day's activities. Not only did I go into my research already thinking about psychology, but I already felt accomplished and motivated. Number 2, organize strategically. I call this the restaurant approach. Just like in a restaurant, they bring you first the bread, then the starters, then the main dish, then the dessert. We should do the same with our activities. I will always work first on my research because it was before any other work, because it was the most difficult and least stimulating of my tasks. It was the bread. And then I will gradually move throughout the day to more stimulating and pleasurable activities. The gradual increase in easiness and stimulation will help us stay focused and engaged. Number 3, reduce clutter. Humans will always choose mundane tasks over boredom, unless there's a third option, like scrolling on social media. Luckily for me, the ocean took care of this one by eliminating my phone from the equation, but you don't have to go that far. The key is to organize your space by reducing distractions, leaving only 2 options: either get bored or do the thing. And number 4, reward properly. When we reward ourselves with small treats after completing a task, we receive a boost of dopamine. For example, after completing the first task, enjoy a cup of coffee, a morning beverage, then go for a walk or grab lunch after the second one. And once you complete them all, then indulge in a hobby or go out for dinner. However, relying solely on external rewards can diminish our intrinsic motivation. This is called the over-justification effect. So it's important that we learn how to reward ourselves internally. When I was working on my research, I would recognize the skills and the progress I was making while doing my research. And this helped me stay motivated to keep going. We have to understand that our phones have the capacity to completely derail the progress towards our goals. So now that you know how to manipulate dopamine for success, would you let overstimulating distractions hold you back, or would you fight back to achieve what you want? The choice is yours. Thank you.